Shalom, hello, welcome. This is Rabbi Johnny Solomon, the virtual rabbi, and this is my online Chumash Rashi share dedicated in memory to my dear friend Lenny Borgia, Yudale Ben Shmuel. This Shabbat we'll be reading Parshat Shmini, and in this week's share we're going to be sharing a number of fascinating insights about the events described in Parshat Shmini. Let's begin. We begin with the inauguration of the Mishkan. And the Mishkan was constructed and deconstructed over a 7-day period by Moshe Rabbeinu, and then on the 8th day, by Yom HaShmini, was the ultimate inauguration of the Mishkan. As we read in the Parsha, it was a day of great drama, unfortunately. We begin and we're told the following: Ve'el b'nei Yisrael tedaber le'emor k'chu se'ir ezim lechatat ve'egel ve'keves b'nei shana tmimim le'olah ושור ועיל לשלמים לזבוח לפני השם ומנחה בלולה בשמן כי היום השם נראה עליכם. And to the children of Israel you shall speak, saying, take a he-goat as a sin offering and a calf and a lamb, both in their first year and both unblemished, as a burnt offering, and an ox and a ram as peace offerings to slaughter before the Lord, and a meal offering mixed with oil, for today the Lord is appearing to you. So this is, of course, the instruction given to what is about to take place in this great momentous event in terms of the Machane Yisrael, in terms of the camp of the Israelites, with the Mishkan there right at the center. On this says Rashi the following: Ki hayom Hashem nira alechem, for today the Lord is appearing to you, to make His Shechina rest in the work of your hands. Lashrot Shechinato b'maaseh yedeichem. And for this reason, these sacrifices are obligatory for this day, meaning there's something to do with the fact that God is now about to make the Mishkan a place of His residence, a place where His Shekhinah is to rest, that warrants these korbanot to be offered. But what is this all about? Let's move on and have a look at the insight of Rav Eliyahu Bakshi Doron. You'll recall the former Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel in his Binyan Av, and there in a lengthy essay primarily focusing on the Birkat Kohanim, he tells us something fascinating about the significance of this event. לאחר שבעת ימי המילואים בהם שימש משה רבנו בכהונה בטרם שרתה השכינה. After the 7 days where Moshe Rabbeinu serves as a priest prior to the Shekhinah resting in that place, Moshe Rabbeinu mekim u'mefarek the Mishkan, where Moshe constructed and deconstructed the Mishkan, b'yom hashmini kara Moshe la'Aaron u'vanav. On that 8th day, Moshe speaks to Aaron and his sons, as we saw before, v'tziva otam lachnoch et ha'Mishkan v'korbanot. And he commanded them to dedicate the Mishkan with offerings. Kach lecha egel ben bakar lechatat v'ai le'olah tmimim. You shall take a calf, and you shall do so for a sin offering, and a ram for an olah offering. Kshekatuv machriz, and then the verse continues to proclaim, Ki yom Hashem nir'a alechem, because today God's presence is going to appear before you. A Pirush Rashi, and Rashi explains, Lashchot shchinato b'maaseh yedeichem, to rest God's presence through the work of your hands. In that very moment when Aaron and Moshe and his son, come close to offer the sacrifices, we are told, this is later on in Pasuk Hey, that the entire community came near and they stood before God. When the whole community was there standing before God, Moshe then turns the people, and this is Pasuk Vav, and we're told, V'yomer Moshe zeh hadavar asher tziva Hashem ta'asu v'yar elechem kvod Hashem. Moshe tells the people, this is the matter that God has commanded you that you shall do, and v'yar elechem kvod Hashem. And in so doing, the honor of God, the glory of God will appear before you. הוראה זו של משה רבינו לכל העם, זה הדבר שציווה השם תעשו, אומר דרשני. Says Rabbi Eliyahu Bakshi Doron, but the question is, What was Moshe saying here? As he tells us, these words of Moshe to the people require elucidation. The people are standing, they're not doing anything. Who is doing the avodah? Aaron and the sons. All the commandments have been given to Aaron and his sons. And notwithstanding the fact that Aaron and his sons are the messengers of the people, what is Moshe meaning by emphasizing to the people, this is a matter which God has commanded you to do, b'shazu, in this moment? Targum Yonatan tells us something significant. And he says, Din pat gamad after dun, ivrun yatzar bisha, milivchon miad galei lechaven ikar shchinta Hashem. Meaning, this is what you should do. You should put away the imagination of evil from your hands, and as a result of that, God's presence will immediately appear before you. And this is what the Midrash Halacha also says. This is a matter which you shall do. This is what Moshe says to Israel. That Yetzirah that we all have within ourselves, move it away from your heart, so that you should all have that same sense of awe, so that you can all feel that you are serving before God. And if you do so, God's honor, God's glory will appear before you. Continues Rabbi Bakshi Doron, what we see from this is that in order for God's presence to rest in the Mishkan, the people must spiritually prepare themselves to ready themselves to welcome the Shekhinah. And even though true Aaron and his sons were those who offered the sacrifices, nevertheless God's presence depended on the spiritual level and the spiritual readiness of the people. And continues Rabbi Bakshi Doron, the Malbim explains this further. So this is what he says, this is the matter which God commands you to do. Says the Malbim, it's not clear what Moshe was telling the people to do. They weren't doing anything, only Aaron was serving, and of course his sons. Appears B'Sifra. Nevertheless, the Midrash Halacha quotes, B'derech HaDrush, in a more, shall we say, creative elucidation. Shetiva Hashem yasu Maaseh HaKohen Gadol. Shehem yasu Maaseh HaKohen Gadol. That they should do what the Kohen Gadol was doing. What does it mean? The people should do the actions of the Kohen Gadol. Shema she'aseh HaKohen Gadol b'Beit HaMikdash. That which the Kohen Gadol was doing in the Mishkan, what he means here. Yasuem b'Beit HaMikdash HaKatan, Wa'alev asher sham Mishken Kvod Hashem. They should do that internally, in their inner temple, in their heart. This is what we hear from the words in Parshat Truma. Asul Mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham. כמו שזבחו כוחות החיים והקטירו על המזבח הגדול, כן יזבח כל איש כוחות הנפש מתעבר מתעורר בסתר דבעירה, הוא היצר הרע על המזבח הקטן, להביאו באש אהבת השם, ואם עשיתם כן ירג עליכם כבוד השם, לשכום כבוד בתוככם. What we're being told is just as much as korbanot are offered on the physical mizbeach, we need to offer up our yetzer hara so that we can serve God in the right way. Ad kan l'shano. That's the end of the quote from the Malbim. And so when Aaron HaKohen sees that all the people are standing, and they're readying themselves to receive the divine presence, and the sacrifices are going up, according to the divine wish. What does Aaron do? He lifts his hands and he towards the people, Yivarchem, and he blesses them. And this blessing came from appreciation, admiration, affection and love based on what the people had done. And this is a blessing otherwise known to us as a Birkat Kohanim. So what we see here from Eliyahu Bakshi Doron is that what happens in this pasuk, whereby we are told that the Kohanim need to bring a korban, or korbanot, and this is in order to basically make the Mishkan a place of the divine presence. And the Pesukim continue in Pesukim Hey and Vav. The Moshe then turns to the people. What the people got to do with it? Because what they do is absolutely essential in order to ensure that the Shekhinah comes to rest in the Mishkan. Now, having mentioned the Birkat Kohanim, which is what Rabbi Bakshi Doron explains, is what Aaron said to the people, having been inspired by them basically doing a korban of their heart, right? And in so doing, enabling the Shekhinah to rest in the Mishkan. Let's now talk about the Birkat Kohanim. And we're told here the following. V'yisa Aaron et yadav el ha'am v'yivarchem v'yered ma'asot ha'chatat v'ha'olav ha'shlamim. And Aaron lifted up his hands towards the people and blessed them. He then descended from preparing the sin offering, the burnt offering, and the peace offering. And if we weren't sure what was meant by it says that he blessed them, says Rashi, Birkat Kohanim. This is a Birkat Kohanim. Yivarechecha Ye'er Yisa. He gives us the first words of those 3 verses. Of course, we're told later on in Sefer Bamidbar. But asks Vav Tzvi Pesach Frank the following: why does Rashi need to tell me what the Birchas Kohanim are? I know that. I know the Birchas Kohanim are Yivarechecha Ye'er and Yisa. Why does Rashi need to add those words, having already told me Birkat Kohanim? And he tells us something remarkable, which very much fits in with the explanation of Rabbi Eliyahu Bakshi Doron. That is, Barashi katav yivarchem Birkat Kohanim yivarcha Ye'er Yisa. And then he says, B'siftei chachamim hiksha mekivan da'amar Birkat Kohanim lama tzarich lefaresh seder halacha yidiyah lekol. Having told us it's Birchas Kohanim, why do we need to be told the order of the verses? Od yesh latek. There's another question, which is, in the preceding words that we say as the Birchas Kohanim is about to be recited, we are told, bless us with a blessing, with a triple blessing, which is written in the Torah, as written by Moshe, your servant, and as was said by the mouth of Aaron and his sons. Why do we need to say that it was said by Aaron? We know it's in the Torah. Why basically does the words that we have in our Sidurim and Machzorim not end by period, that's it. I don't need to say and he continues, he says the following: it may well be that at this point, at the inauguration of the Mishkan, the Birchas Kohanim hadn't been given. God hadn't told Aaron and his sons what to say. Aaron, inspired by the people, for the reasons mentioned for Rabbi Eliyahu Bakshi Doron, his heart is filled with admiration of the people and their affection for God and their love of God. And so he says, Birchas Kohanim, he coins Birchas Kohanim. And only afterwards God says, you know those things you said to the people? I want you and your descendants to say it to Jews. That's why the words say, the words said by Aaron, to tell us that Aaron was mechadesh, he coined, he created the words of this blessing. And that's why Rashi says those words, and this is what Rashi is saying, Aaron blessed with the Birkat Kohanim. I think that's fascinating. The Birchat Kohanim that's recited nowadays every day in Israel by Kohanim was not given and instructed by Kodesh Baruch Hu, by Moshe to Aaron. These were the spontaneous words of Aaron that he says about the people, to the people. He blesses the people, and God says, I love that. Keep on saying that, you and your descendants. Ad kan the Har Tzvi ala Torah. And we've now just finished the Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank's beautiful and fascinating insight ala Torah. Let's now talk about what happens with the Mishkan. And we're told the following: V'yavo Moshe v'Aaron el Ohel Moed, yetzu v'ochem v'vochet ha'am v'yag kvod Hashem el kol ha'am. And Moshe and Aaron went into the tent of meeting. Then they came out and blessed the people, and the glory of the Lord appeared to all of the people. On this, Rashi has a question. Why did they go into the Ohel Moed? Here I'll read from the English just to make sure we maintain the flow, maybe jump to the Hebrew a little bit. Why did they enter the tent of meeting? In the section of the investitures, I found a Braita added to our version of the Torah Kohanim, which says, why did Moshe enter with Aaron? To teach him about the procedure of the burning of the incense. Or did he perhaps enter only for another purpose? I can make a deduction. Descending from the altar and entering the tent of meeting required blessing the people. Just as ascending is related to the service, so is entering the tent of meeting related to the service. Hence, you learn from here why Moshe entered with Aaron, namely to teach him about the procedure of burning the incense, which is related to the service. So that's one explanation why they're both going in together. But let's continue with Rashi. Another explanation of why Moshe enters with Aaron is when Aaron saw that all the sacrifice had been offered and all the procedures had been performed, and yet the Shekhinah had not yet descended for Israel, he was distressed. He said, I know that the Holy One, blessed be He, is angry with me, and my account, the Shekhinah has not descended for Israel. This is to do with the Egel HaZahav, and Rashi makes later reference to that. And so he said to Moshe, my brother Moshe, is this what you've done to me, that I have entered and been put to shame? And once Moshe entered the tent of meeting with him, and they prayed for mercy, then the Shekhinah came down for Israel. So Aaron basically doubts himself at this momentous occasion, and then things change. And on this, I'd like to share with you an interesting insight by Rabbi David Schnur from his Alei Desha. Alei Desha, by the way, is a collection of insights of Moroccan rabbis ala Torah, a bit like Me'inah Shel Torah. We'll see that in a second. And he sometimes includes his own insights. He does so here. Rashi toach ba'arichut leta'er matzav rucham shel klal Yisrael hanichlamin uvushim. He makes reference here not just to this Rashi but others as well, that Rashi puts a lot of effort into trying to make sense of and describe the spiritual status of Klal Yisrael. And he also speaks here about Aaron HaKohen, who is frustrated, thinking that perhaps it's because of him that the Shekhinah has yet to come upon the Mishkan. וגם משה רבנו מכריז ואומר שרק אהרון בעבודתו כדאי להביא את השכינה ולא הוא עצמו. And then we hear from Moshe, who's basically saying, actually, Aaron, because of your service, the Shekhinah will be present. And says Rabbi David Schnur the following, הרי לנו דוגמה של בני אדם מתוקנים התולים, כולם החיסרון בעצמם ההצלחה בזולת. He says, what a beautiful thing. Each person saying, the floor's with me and you're amazing. This is not what we see with Bilam when speaks to Balak. בנה בזה שבעת מזבחות, וכן לי בזה שבעה פרים ושבעה אלים, וכשבלק קיים ועשה, הלך בלעם מעיז לדבר עם השם יתברך, ולומר לו את שבעת המזבחות, ערכתי ועל פר. What happens? Basically, what we are told is the following, that Bilam tells Balak to bring all these korbanot, but then Balak tries to take the credit for himself. He says Rabbi David Schnur, think about the difference. What kind of person do you want to be? Somebody who gets ideas from others and takes all the credit yourself? Or somebody where things go wrong and you reflect and you actually praise and give chizuk to others? I think that's a lovely, lovely thing. And what he suggests is it comes about and is evident in a number of the Rashis in this week's Parshat. Let's end by making reference to the Shiloh. There's actually a machloket in this week's Parshat Shmini, about the korbanot that Onen can offer. Why Onen? Because of course Nadav and Avihu die. They die, and that makes Parshat Shmini a very, very shocking and dramatic parasha. וידבר אהרון אל משה, הן היום הקריבו את חטאתם ואת עולתם, לפני השם תקרנה אותי כאלה, ואכלתי חטאת היום היטב בעיני השם. And Aaron spoke to Moshe, but today did they offer up the sin offering and their burnt offering before the Lord? But if tragic events like these had befallen me, if I had eaten the sin offering today, would it have pleased the Lord? So that's a question. Asks Rashi, quoting Gemara, says the following: Hayitav b'nei Hashem, im shemata b'kodshei sha'ah, ein lecha lakel b'kodshei dorot. If you heard this special law that on it may eat holy sacrifices brought exclusively for a special occasion, like the people's sin, you have no right to be lenient regarding this law regarding holy sacrifices offered for future generations, like the sacrifice of Rosh Chodesh, about which you asked us. So there's a machlokah between Moshe and Aaron as to whether the onen may eat from all the korbanot or just some of the korbanot. And Aaron basically draws a distinction between unique korbanot for that hour, for this special occasion of the inauguration of the Mishkan, and other korbanot that are going to be offered in the future as well. And this leads Rav Moshe Zev Margaliot in his Agudat Ezov, and this is quoted in the Me'inah Shel Torah. I mentioned that beforehand, which is a collection of many of them being Hasidic insights on the Torah. And he says the following: Im shamat b'kodshei sha'ah, ein lecha kel b'kodshei dorot. And asks the Agudat Ezov the following: Minayin be'emet yada Aaron avdil ben kedushei sha'ah leben kedushei dorot. Where did Aaron get the idea you can distinguish between sacrifices that are related to that moment in time, unique to that moment, and sacrifices which will be forever, basically? Bram amru chachamim sheba'etzem nitchayvu nadav avihu mita od be'et kabbalat haTorah lipi shezanu einehem miziv hashechina. He says, in fact, it's been argued that Nadav and Avihu already chayav misa from the time of Matan Torah. Why? Because they turned their eyes from the divine presence. K'fi shne'emar v'yechazu et ha'elohim v'yachlu v'yishtu. El shelo ratza HaKadosh Baruch Hu lashbit et hasimcha v'yimtin ad כה. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided, I'm not going to ruin that moment of Matan Torah with the death of Nadav and Avihu, and he waited till this point in time. But continues the Agudat Ezov, V'kasha efo, halo gam achshav hayta simcha shel Chanukat HaMishkan. That may have been a happy occasion, but so too was this. This is the dedication and the inauguration of the Mishkan. V'lama pam ken hoshpata simcha. Why was it justified now to undermine, to spoil the simcha of the moment? Ela enzot ki im simchat kabbalat haTorah gdola hi misimchat haMishkan. And it says the following: there's a vast difference between kabbalat haTorah and the inauguration of the Mishkan. Shchen haMishkan hayta rak kedushei sha'ah. The inauguration of the Mishkan was true; it was a one-time event. It was a unique event. Machash nechrav achar kach. And of course, we then know that there's been a churban. Ve'ilu hi kedushei dorot, right? Shehei nitzchit hil ve'olam lo tishkach misrael. Compared to this is Matan Torah. Matan Torah is something which is forever. Meaning the Mishkan and the Beit HaMikdash were super important, but they were temporal, and they were subsequently destroyed. But Torah is nitzchit, Torah is eternal. Mimela limed Aaron mizeh. As a result, Aaron learned from this that offerings forever are more important than offerings in the moment. לכן אמר ותקרנה אותי כאלה, הן כבר קרא לי כזאת שחטאו נדב ואביהו בעת קבלת התורה, אף על פי כן לא עליהן תשוז, ואילו השמחה של עכשיו הושפטה ממיתתם, הרי למדים אנו מזה שיש הבדל בין קדושי שעה לבין קדושי תורה. Meaning, the very fact that Nadav and Avihu die now and not at Matan Torah tells us of this difference in the sanctity of the moment between something unique and something only going to take place once and something which is eternal. And that's why Aaron draws a distinction in terms of korbanos. So let's just quickly summarize. We summarize by saying the following. We began by talking about God's divine presence through the work of their hands, and this comes from not just the avodah of the Kohanim, but also the internal avodah of Am Yisrael, and this is evident from the psukim there, when Moshe speaks to the people. We spoke here about the Birchas Kohanim. Why does Rashi tell us what are the Birchas Kohanim? The answer is because Aaron himself coins Birchas Kohanim at that moment in time. What's happening between Moshe and Aaron? It seems to be that Aaron is blaming himself, and Moshe is saying, no, it's not you, it's me, etc. We compare this with Bilam and Balak, and about how there are people who give others credit and there are others who take others people's credit. And lastly, we see Aaron taking a different view to Moshe Rabbeinu regarding the korbanot, which are unique to that moment, and those forever. And says Rav Moshe Zeber Agalia that we see something similar in terms of understanding the punishment of Nadav and Avihu. Why were they not killed in Har Sinai? The answer is because that was a timeless moment, whereas this is a timely moment, and that distinction therefore informed Aaron in terms of the distinction he brings between Klushei Sha'ah and Klushei Dot. I wish you Shabbat Shalom.